Right before we jump into this video, if you'd like me to send you a free guide to capturing motion in low light situations, just look for this orange box over on FroKnowsPhoto.com, put your name, email address in it, hit send it. I'm gonna send you that guide for free. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a review of the brand new Canon 135 1.8 IS lens for Canon RF mount. Now, I've taken this out into the real world and shot a lot of things, from BMX bike riders going around the track coming right at me at 1.8, which was insane, to tennis players, to soccer matches, as well as shooting the World Series. That's right, I took this to the World Series.
The Houston Astros, world champions!
And the Phillies lost, so don't buy this lens.
Our hearts are ripped out right now.
That's not true, because you should probably buy this lens, and we'll talk more about that as we get on. But there will be a slideshow at the end of this video showing you the images that I captured, because I can't show you all of them here, but I'm really happy with the results that I got so far. But before we jump into the sample images, let's start looking at the outside of the lens. The first thing that you saw is this is the lens hood. This is a big lens hood. It covers most of the lens. So if you're, well, honestly, if you're buying this and you don't know to turn your lens hood around, maybe you should just go away and return it, but always take your lens hood off and use it. Unless you're in an area where there's a lot of photographers, like at the World Series, and you're all trying to shoot, in which case I took the lens hood off of my 400 2.8 because everybody else did too, because we're all clumped in there and you don't want to bone someone else's shot, so you all take your lens hoods off. That's just a little thing that I didn't realize until I started shooting the World Series with everybody else there. All right, so this is the lens hood. I was told that it's the same lens hood as the 600 f11. So they're repurposing it, but it works here. You have an 82mm filter thread, so if you want to get your variable ND filters or any filters, just know that it's 82mm. In the hands, this feels extremely nice. It is a nice feeling lens. They still have the control ring out here, which I never use. I always deactivate it. They have some buttons here that you can program. You can select it, hold your focus, turn off AF, or whatever you want to do. You could go ahead and turn that off. You have two switches on the side. You have manual focus, you have autofocus, as well as IS on and IS off. This lens will give you 8 stops of image stabilization when paired with the R5 or an R3, or even the R6 at this point. You can get up to 8 stops of image stabilization. In terms of motors, you have nano USM motors. The first thing I noticed when I was shooting this with the R6 Mark II was I could actually hear the autofocus slightly when it was quiet around me. You're not going to hear that in a stadium of noisy people, but I could hear the autofocus working, which means if you're going to shoot some video, you might want to keep that in mind. Now, it's not super loud. It's just because it's right here and I could hear it. But on the other side, let me move this massive lens hood out of the way. We've got Sony's 135 1.8 right here. And this one is definitely, oops, almost knocked that one off the table, is super silent. Now you can see they're almost the same size. It looks like the Canon one is slightly larger, mostly because you've got the IS built in, where you do not have the IS in this Sony. This Sony is one of my all-time favorite lenses. I absolutely love the quality that you get out of this. It's a great feeling lens. It's a perfect lens. If you own a Sony and you're a pro, you gotta own this 135. Now there are some slight differences. I just said this one has IS and this one doesn't have IS. If you're someone who likes different bokeh blades, well, this one has 9, and this one has 11. So I guess 11's better, but you're not buying a system for one or the other. You're not gonna be like, oh shit, this has 9, I'm gonna go buy this one because it has 11. If you have a Sony, you buy this 135. If you have a Canon and you're a pro, you're probably buying this 135. Now, in terms of weight, the Canon weighs in at 2.06 pounds or 935 grams, and the Sony is very similar in weight. There is not much of a difference there, but I'm gonna put this back down here right now. Now, if you're someone who shoots with teleconverters, well, You can't use a teleconverter with this, at least one of the Canon teleconverters, and you wouldn't want to use it anyway. I have a whole video on teleconverters, on why I don't like them. You can check that out. It is linked down below. In terms of minimum focus, you get 2.3 feet of minimum focus, which isn't bad at all. But now would be a good time to start to show you some of the sample images. I was out in San Diego. We went out to the Olympic Center, and there was a lot going on out there where I was able to photograph those BMX bike riders coming around the course, as well as this guy right here, who's Manny Ortiz. This is at 1.8. I shot everything basically at 1.8 with this lens because I want that isolation, but I also wanted to see how the autofocus was, and time again, I nailed it. It nailed it time and time again. In this case, Manny Ortiz, super duper sharp, nice and crisp, a nice looking image. But this is the selling point of the lens, is this section right here where we have the BMX riders coming around the course, and I am autofocusing on them at 1.8 with a R6 Mark II. We're not even talking about using the R3 in this situation. I mean, look at this as I zoom in. Super tack sharp, right where it needs to be. If this was another system, it might not be able to track and follow the subject, but it's one thing to get it right with the first shot, but how does it track all the way through? Well, this was the end of the sequence, shooting 40 frames a second, and it's still in focus. That is the point, being able to shoot at 1.8 and track a subject with a $2,500 camera. We all know that autofocus is great, but to do it at 1.8 is insane. We do it all the time with this 1.2. This is a chunker of a lens. Yes, a chunker of a lens. It's an 85 1.2 RF where I shoot action sports at 1.2 and it still nails the focus. Now there is going to be a big question answered at the end of this video whether you should have an 85 or a 135 from Canon, but we will get to that by the end of this video. So moving on with photos, this is a great portrait lens. I mean, you saw the picture of Manny. Now you see the portrait of these two BMX riders right here, and you can see at 1.8, it nails it. I mean, they're not moving, so you would expect it to be great, but look at the separation you get from the background. It's about the contrast and the dimension and the separation that you get. That's what these images are all about. That's why you use the best of the best glass with Honor Sir, because it separates you from the amateurs out there who think that they want to use a 100 to 500 to shoot everything, and then you put your images next to it and you're like, damn, look at the difference. Yes, Pro Glass really sets you apart from everyone else. And I'll tell you, when I first started out and my first Pro lens was an 80 to 200 2.8 Nikon, I didn't even know how to set the camera. I was in aperture priority mode for years. And yes, that lens made me better until I was able to catch up and learn more about photography. But at the time, that lens allowed me to be competitive with other people because I was getting better shots. Didn't know what I was doing yet, but now I do, and just using the better glass is imperative to just making you stand out. Of course, you need to know composition and exposure. I mean, look at this guy. He looks like Val Kilmer a couple of years ago. It is a fantastic shot. Is the lighting perfect? No, because it was like 12 o'clock when we were shooting out there in San Diego, but still, composition, color, tones, sharpness, awesome with this photo right here. Let me jump in here real quick because I want to show you this photo taken with the Canon 135 1.8 and edited with 12 presets from FroPak 3, starting with Zoolander. Zoolander looks awesome. Then we've got Winnebago, followed by Prestige Worldwide, November Rain. We've got Mount Airy, followed by Mentos, King Contrast, Eckert, Capone, Canadian Tuxedo, Almost Famous, and as well as Fifth Element. But I also want to show you this one from FroPak 1 called Skittles. With one click, here we go, and boom, it comes to life. So if you're looking to speed up your raw workflow or give yourself a great starting point, we created 15 custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at FroKnowsPhoto.com/FroPak3. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters. And if you decide to pick them up right now, they are currently on sale. Or if you want to get the triple play bundle that includes FroPak 1, 2, and 3, which has Skittles in it, you can save even more. Now, let's get back to the video. Next up, we moved to track and field where we had this runner right here, and I wanted to get a nice portrait of her. I got down on the track, super low angle, because sometimes you just want to get that hero shot, and I used the EVF recorder to be my viewfinder so that you can see the focusing points working. That's how we're able to record all of these videos that you're seeing of inside the camera and watching it track. That's how we do it. I just love this portrait. Now, if I had the 85 1.2 with me to do a side-by-side, it would be interesting to see the difference between 1.2 and 1.8. I love the look that you get from a 1.2 sometimes. You just want to obliterate the background, but the 135 is a really nice lens for portraits like this. So it's all a toss-up whether you have the 85 or the 135 or you end up owning both. Many pros are going to own both. I have both, and it's going to be a dilemma which one to pull out when, because they both are fantastic for even action sports wide open. Moving on to more action, we've got tennis. This is something that's moving super fast. So I still shot it at 1.8 and everything looks great. I mean, look how distracting the background is still at 1.8. It's distracting because it's fences and an ugly building, but it's less distracting than if you were across the way with a 100 to 500 7.1 because you're out at 500 millimeters. That's what the point of having fast glass is. It's to separate not just the subjects from the background, but separate you from everyone else and separate you from your money because it's more expensive when you do that. But it's definitely worth it and what sets you apart as a photographer. Action shot, it freezes the action perfect because of course it will if you with the right exposure, but the point is super sharp right on his face. That's what it's all about. At 1.8 to be able to shoot action sports, that is the selling point for me. We've got more. I shot a lot. Like I said, I took this into the real world. We have a playoff game, the Philadelphia Union Soccer Club. We've got the goalie at 1.8. Look at the separation you get. It's not the ideal soccer lens. You really want something longer unless they're all right in front of you. What I noticed is when you have a smaller subject in the distance, it's much harder to nail them at 1.8. It just wasn't able to do it very well. It would either miss to the background or be just slightly hazy, but that's because the subject is super far away and this is not the lens for that. But when they do fill the frame more, like a shot like this where they're running right towards me, this is perfect. Look as I zoom in on him. It is fan-freaking-tastic. It isolates the subject, but you can still see the players in the background all upset. And even this one right here is the goalie diving. I missed the kicker because I'm at 135, but we got the goalie diving and we've got the ball going into the net. So that's a winning shot, except for this guy is in the way right here. It's not the best of the best with honor, sir. It would be better if I saw the guy kicking the ball and the ball going in. That's where a 70 to 200 would be better, but it's still awesome that you're shooting at 1.8 and you are nailing your subject and nailing your focus. And finally, in terms of what I shot, the World Series. Took this lens out to the World Series. It was very good to use during batting practice because I can get down onto the field and get closer to the players. Now, I can't go everywhere. I've got to stay behind that rope line. Other photographers are allowed to get closer when they're working for Major League Baseball. I had to keep a little bit of a distance because they don't want too many people crowding around. But the isolation and separation you get, again, the colors, the tones, the sharpness. This is Schwarber right here. Look, I'm zoomed all the way in. It's incredible. I don't know if this is like 4,000 times zoomed in, but that is pinching and zooming quite far. This is the isolation that you look for. I mean, here you could see we've got a photographer on the right-hand side as the players are walking towards me. We've got a bunch of the batting practice stuff like the bucket of balls, the basket of balls, and the flags and everything in the background. Just look at the isolation and the contrast and the tones and everything. This is why you shoot at 1.8. And you'll see in the slideshow some more baseball photos, but I just wanted to show you this one right here. It has almost the entire starting lineup for the Phillies all in one picture. Now it's the backs of their heads because I'm not allowed to go onto the field, but the Phillies did get a picture of this from the front end, a little bit different, but if you zoom in on the right-hand side of this image, Steven, you can see that's me out there, and I'm shooting this image a little before they took it, but right before they took it. So I wish I was able to go to the front and get the shot, but I wasn't. I just absolutely love this lens. Oh, Schwarber during batting practice. 1.8 through the netting of the batting practice cage. Awesome. And a couple more from the Phillies game. We've got Brandon Marsh right here. He was getting an interview or talking to someone. I'm like, oh snap, I'm getting a portrait of him because it was the only chance that with a 135 that I could get close to the players like this. It's just the colors, the tones, the sharpness. This is the ideal lens for photojournalists, for wedding shooters, for portrait shooters. it's a must-have in your bag. And finally, it's not ideal in every situation. Like I said, at a distance, I had a little bit of trouble with this shot of Schwarber or other batters that came up. 135 is a really cool range, even in this situation, because look, you have the ball right here on the left-hand side going out. This was a Schwarbomb. He hit another home run in this situation, and I just like it because I could get all the crowd in there, but you don't get as much of the separation. So a 70 to 200 in this situation might be just as good. So what we've seen is that this is an absolute fantastic lens. Let me jump in here real quick to let you know that this video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you're looking to build your very own online portfolio, use what I've been using for more than 10 years for my personal website because it's simple, easy, affordable, and I don't need to know coding. I guarantee you in a matter of minutes, you can have a website up and a gallery out there showing your work. To get a 14-day free trial, head on over to squarespace.com/FroKnowsPhoto. If you decide that it's for you, use the code FroKnowsPhoto at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Now, let's get back to the video. Before I get to the price, we've got the sniff test and wind tunnel test. We're gonna start with the wind tunnel test and see how it does. Fail, fail. It's an absolute fail. But guess what? The wind tunnel test doesn't matter very much. But the sniff test does. Let's smell it. Failure. Smells like losers. The Phillies are not losers. It doesn't smell like champagne from getting champagned on when the Phillies won the World Series, because they didn't win the World Series. They lost. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, good for you, you got so far. No, you lost. But obviously it was unexpected. They expected it. Hopefully next year, back at it. It's a long road ahead, but this is an awesome lens. It costs $2,099. So $2,100. I expected it to be $2,399, $2,400 when it came out, but it matches the price of the Sony. This is a lens that if you're a pro, you don't even question whether or not you need to own it and have it in your bag. You buy this lens right now. You use the link down below in my description to order it from Allen's or anywhere else that you'd like to that I have a link to, because that helps me out. But this is a lens that you absolutely buy. Hands down, flat out, no questions asked, amazing piece of glass that belongs in your bag if you are a pro. But do you get the 85 1.2 or this lens? The answer is, if you're a pro, you buy both. You spend the money, you have both because they do different things. This is going to be great for weddings. This is going to be great for portraits. They just serve two different purposes. They are very close together, but if we married them into, say, a 105 1.4, like one of the greatest lenses ever made from Nikon, the 105 1.4, then maybe we would be onto something different. But maybe they're not going to do that because they have an 85 1.2 and a 135 1.8. So that's what I have to say there, guys. This is an incredible lens. It's a must buy if you have the RF and you're a pro and you can afford it. It belongs in your bag. So that's where I'm going to leave it. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Jared, Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.